In today's episode, I had a discussion with Natasha Budda, mortgage specialist at Bank of Montreal. We discussed a lot about the difference between getting financing for residential versus commercial properties, and also what are the things that banks are looking at these days to get people qualified for mortgages. Natasha has experience in both commercial lending and residential lending, and she shares her experience as to how to make your application stand out. Please comment if you would like to hear more about this topic and what other topics in financing we would like to hear more about. Hi, everyone. My next guest today on my podcast is Natasha. Natasha is a friend of mine, but she's also a top mortgage broker in Toronto, and she works with BMO. So today's conversation is going to be very, very exciting for all the people that want to talk about the crazy Toronto market, the crazy prices, interest rates, and I'm going to rely on you to shed some light on everything that's going on in this crazy changing market. So
Perfect.
welcome.
Thank you, Salwa. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about, your career trajectory, what got you interested and in this field for some time now?
Perfect. So I actually started with RBC, started about 8 years ago, started in their commercial side. I was actually in the commercial real estate side. So I was lending on on the commercial side of it. So contractors, plazas and all that. And I did that for I would say about 3-4 years. And then I moved to RBC into their wealth side. So I was handling the wealth management side of a big portfolio. And then a baby came along. So I went on mat leave and kind of wanted to see a different part of the bank, and an opportunity presented itself at BMO. And so I jumped out onto the residential side. So I'm a mortgage specialist with BMO. I actually love it because I understand, like, real estate makes sense to me.
Yeah.
It's something like bricks and mortars. It makes sense. When you talk about an investment, I don't think I'm very savvy when it comes to handling a portfolio or that, but I understand real estate. Like, I can see it. So that's where I kind of started from. And then, educating your clients, saying why a real estate is a great asset for a long run, was something that just made sense. And that's where I kind of found my passion.
That's amazing. So you've been doing this for how long now?
So I've been with the Bank of Montreal for about 2 years now.
And moving from commercial to residential, was there a big difference in how lending happens in both of these?
Oh, absolutely. Commercial is a beast. It's a big beast. Going into it, you need to understand that it's not just on, your rent roll. It's a lot about TMI, like your taxes, maintenance, insurance. It's the quality of the tenant. It's how long are the tenants going to be in there? Different uses for the property. They could be special uses, and what kind of reputational risk is there for the bank. Residential is a little bit more simpler, I find. However, there's so many programs that the average person doesn't know. So when we go into residential, there's so many ways of qualifying for a home or qualifying for an investment property that people don't even know about, and they just think that the very traditional 20% down is the only route to go. There's ways, but we just need to sit down and talk.
Absolutely. Now, the sitting down and talking part, I feel like mortgage agents and realtors need to partner more. This is like my experience. I've been, buying for about 7 years now. I just find that realtors and mortgage brokers are not acting like teams. There's a tug of war. So what has your experience been? Because you work with a specific bank now. Are you working with a lot of realtors on the education piece with their clients, or is it mainly your clients that you're referring to a lot of real estate partners?
So absolutely, I think you've hit it right on the spot. I don't see that relationship and that partnership happening, and it's not, taking your client out first and seeing a home and, setting their expectations high that they can afford this, let's just say $2 million house, but
Bad
realistically
idea.
they can't. And having that conversation before is easier for both you and the client, right? I mean, it's setting expectations right from the first place.
Yeah.
Getting a pre-approval. A lot of clients will come up to me and say, "Oh, we don't want to get a pre-approval done because, I don't want to be limited." But it helps you budget. It helps you sleep better at night. Like, I think there was one thing when I was buying my house, and I'll use an example. I said to my husband, "I want to be able to sleep at night. I want to make that mortgage payment and be able to know.
Comfortably make that mortgage payment.
Right.
Yeah.
So getting that pre-approval done, and then, going with the agent, and then now knowing that this is what my limit is.
Yeah.
And not seeing something out of your limit, because it's really, it's funny because when you go and see a property, you fall in love with it.
That's exactly what I tell my clients, but I do get some pushback, right? Because I'm like, listen, I can show you these homes, but you're going to fall in love with a home. You're going to get emotionally attached. Then I don't want to break your heart when I introduce you to my mortgage partner. So I do get a lot of pushback, but I think that all of the realtors, that we're dealing with have to have that same mindset. It's just like the education piece on financing is still not there. As much as I try to post on social media about how important it's to get a pre-approval, a lot of clients do get emotionally attached to a property, and then the rude awakening, their bank tells them this is nowhere close to what you can afford. So what would you advise people that are even thinking about starting to look at a home right now to do first?
You know what? I even tell a lot of my clients, don't even get a firm pre-approval. Let's just sit down and talk.
Numbers, yeah.
Let's just sit down, take a back of the envelope calculation. Let's just do those. Let's just see what you're kind of looking at.
Yeah.
And then the worst part is when you sit down with these clients, and actually, it's not the worst part, the best part is when you sit down, these clients go, oh, actually, I didn't want a condo. Well, I don't want to pay maintenance fees. Well, that's factored in.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't want that. Oh, no, I can't live without that. Well, let's sit down and talk, because having that discussion, you actually filter out what you don't want and what you do want. And I'll use myself as an example. I wanted a house that was in the best,
part of the GTA.
No, it was for like the best schooling. And my husband said to me, you're pregnant and our kid's not going to school till like 5 years. So what are you really looking at? Is this for your forever home? And I was like, no, it's not. And that was my awakening. I was like, okay, well, I don't need the best school district right now.
Yeah.
Like, that's not my immediate need.
Yeah.
Maybe my immediate need is to be closer to family with a newborn.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it was just stuff like that. So I was like, okay, I think I need to make a list, because I say it to others, but I didn't make that list for myself.
That's true. A lot of the people that watch my podcast and also follow me, my network of clients is people that are becoming first-time investors. So they have bought their home, primary residence, but I help them get to the level where they can use their equity and savings and buy an investment property. So how do those numbers work? And do you, like at BMO, work with a lot of those people that are starting out their investment portfolio?
Absolutely. So I think BMO, I'm a little biased here, but I think BMO has one of the best rental offset programs. We recently introduced within GTA 90% that income that we can use from the rental property, and outside of GTA it's 80%. It used to be 50%.
It used to be 50.
Yeah, so
That's
we're now
huge.
gone to 80, 90. It's significant when it comes to rental offsets. And that's exactly what your clients should be looking for.
Yeah.
Is this a positive cash flow, or is it a negative cash flow? But how negative is it?
How negative?
Right?
I mean, barely breaking even,
Right.
which a lot of my clients are okay with because they want to bank on the appreciation.
Absolutely. And so when I had a client talk to me and say, oh, this is a negative cash flow. And I said, it's $150 negative cash flow.
Yeah.
But let's look at your property right now, and let's just pick up a history of this property. And when we did, the property had increased, I think, 10% every year.
That's a
so
great
what is
return.
$150 really in the grand scheme?
In the grand scheme.
Also, the thing is, BMO also works on market rent, which is great. So you might be actually having a tenant that could be paying you lower. For example, they've been anchor tenants, they've been there, and you're buying over this property, and you don't want to get rid of those tenants, and you want those tenants to be there. Well, we can actually use market rent to offset as well, which might be much higher than what the tenant's actually paying you.
That's amazing. So the bank doesn't need to look at the actual lease?
If you're buying the property, if you haven't owned it for less, and you don't have 3 months deposit to show me, we can actually order market rent at that point.
Amazing. That's really good to know.
Yeah.
Now, what about people that are big believers of house hacking? So that would buy a duplex or a triplex. They would live in one unit and simultaneously rent out the two. So they're still buying their primary residence, but they're becoming first-time investors at the same time.
Right, perfect, exactly. So because they're legal dwellings, like units, I'm just going to use unit 1 is where they're living, and unit 2 and 3, they're legal units. We can actually use a rent in there as well.
Nice.
Now, so the first unit, we obviously won't because that's where the tenant will
Correct,
be living.
yeah.
But the other two will be able to offset it with our mortgages.
Can a first-time home buyer buy something like that?
Absolutely.
And they can put less than 20% down?
So here's the thing. So with
Yeah.
the 20% down, again, the property has to be less than $1 million.
Yeah.
Right. So yes and no. So again, it's on a kind of a case by case scenario.
Okay.
How strong is the client? Where is the rental property? How much is rent versus first time?
Correct, yeah.
Again, we'll have to kind of go back and see that. But there's no
There's
yes
ways.
or no answer for that.
So it is possible generally
Right.
for a first-time home buyer to simultaneously become a landlord.
Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. Because I have some clients that are interested in buying, a duplex outside of the GTA rather than a condo in downtown Toronto. Because a condo in downtown Toronto could cost them about $600,000. But if they bought a duplex in Niagara Falls, for example, for $620 to $650, they could buy, live in one unit and rent out the other unit.
Right.
So financing for that would cost them the same amount of monthly mortgage payment, but they would get such a significant help towards their mortgage with the rental part of their asset.
Even I always ask clients that when they're first-time home buyers to look at units for houses, if they want to stay in GTA, look at houses that have a legal basement unit.
Exactly.
That is going to help in your mortgage. That's $1,800 to $2,000 that's coming
Yeah.
in from a legal basement unit.
Now explain to me, as a mortgage agent terms, what constitutes a legal basement? Because in Brampton, there's a lot of homes that have basements. What is legal? What is not legal?
So for the bank's perspective, it has to have a fire room. So it has to have a door where, in case of a fire, that tenant can actually exit out and most efficiently. But it has to be city permits. Every time there is what we call a legal unit or a legal basement or any of those stuff, we will send out an appraiser. The bank sends out an appraiser to make sure that if the kitchen, the exhaust, the doors, the windows are all by the city, by the permits, as well as the client will also submit permits to us.
Great.
It's, to get your basement done, I'm just going to throw out a cost. Let's say it's $10,000. To get these permits, they're not additional $1,000 to $2,000. They're not
Might as
that
well.
costly.
Yeah.
Get it the right way if you're going to make your basement.
course.
Yeah.
And is it true that if your basement is legal, like with the city permits, you can rent it at market value or higher?
Of course. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. So, you're getting full potential out of that basement.
Yeah, that's amazing. Because a lot of people, a lot of the homes that are in Brampton, majority of the detached homes have a basement, have a separate entrance, but they're not necessarily legal.
Right.
Because these dwellings don't have a window. And the other thing you said was a fire escape, right?
Yeah, so there has to be a separate entrance for the tenant. The windows, don't quote me, there is a certain size
Yeah,
that they
there's a
have to
size.
be.
That's
the
true.
kitchen has to have a certain exhaust level of the HVAC in it. It has to have a separate bathroom. It has to have those those minimum conditions for someone to live comfortably in.
That's awesome. I want to talk about my favorite topic, multifamily investments. I like to buy multifamily, but I feel like I've gotten so many confusing messages from a lot of the mortgage professionals I have worked with. Shed light on getting financing for a multi-unit that's over 5 units.
So the reason why a lot of the banks kind of hesitant away from it, it's because it's almost like your cousin that you didn't know about. It's kind of like that, it's that gray area.
Yeah.
Are we related? Are we not? So that's what it.
It's really confusing. Nobody knows.
It really depends on the zoning.
Oh, okay.
So once we do the appraisal, because this is where kind of my commercial background comes in from, depending on what the zoning is, it might actually deem as commercial. So 5 units and plus, usually, I'm going to use London as an example. They have a lot of them there.
Yeah.
Those are they're deemed as commercial.
Got it.
And now you cannot benefit from the residential rates, the residential qualifying test, the stress test, nothing. Now you're a full commercial.
Got
and
it.
the reason why it is because these are usually income producing properties, and now this is deemed as commercial. When it's deemed as commercial, a residential mortgage specialist like myself will not be able to lend on it.
Interesting.
Because the zoning will tell us, hey, you can't lend on this.
and the rates are slightly higher than residential,
Absolutely,
right?
because now you're a commercial identity. Now you're coming into that you're crossing over, and now you're an income producing unit. You're a commercial identity.
So is it true that if you're deciding to buy a commercial asset, your income doesn't matter in qualifying you to get financing for that asset? It's how much income that asset is generating.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
So what that asset is generating in terms of the income, what are the expenses, what is that bottom flow number for us that we're using? We will use you, like the individual, as
A
to know
guarantor.
as a guarantor, to know that the character worthiness is there, like the 5 C's are there. Will you be able to pay my loan? What's your history of paying loans?
What if I am not paying the loan, but my tenants are paying the loan?
Absolutely, but how if your tenant's not there? Tenant disappears one night.
Because, like, let me give you a scenario, right? I'm a realtor now, but before I became a realtor, I had quit my HR career and I really wanted to buy an eightplex. And I had $200,000 because I had sold a long-term flip. I wanted to put $200,000 down to buy an asset that was around 900-ish. But Scotiabank was not approving me for financing because I didn't have a job at that time. But I said, well, I am heavily cash flowing on this asset if I buy it. The whole building is rented. 8 units were rented at market value. Cash flow was significant. What options did I have at that point in time? I had to back out. I couldn't do the deal, even though this was a commercial person advising me. So they waived the condition. They said, yeah, sure, we'll get the financing done. 2 days before closing, Scotiabank calls me and said, actually, you don't have a job, so we can't give you financing. And I'm like, you told me in the beginning that this asset can generate enough income to carry itself. So tell me, what could I have done differently, and what is another way to get financing on an asset like that if you don't want your income to be considered, for example?
So yes and no. So when it comes into commercial, it's, first of all, the loan is 75%. So LTV is 75%, whereas
I'd have
residential.
25.
Yeah,
Okay,
so versus residential is the 80-20, it's 75-25. The second thing is, the first thing that as a commercial banker, any banker would look at is saying, what does this asset produce, like the income? They'll minus the expenses of everything and say, well, this is my net.
Yeah.
Net,
So it's
okay?
10,000 of gross income.
Fair enough. That bottom number, and
Per
say,
month.
okay, and we're gonna now use our EBITDA. We're gonna now say
Correct.
what this is a producing thing. The second aspect that we're gonna look at is who's behind this. So who's the candidate behind this? And we're gonna look at the 5 C's, like the 5 C's for lending. And what we're gonna look at is stability, right? Capacity. And we're gonna say, how about if the worst case scenario, one of these tenants leaves?
Got it.
Will Salwa be able to pay our mortgage? Because now she's so dependent on these tenants, right?
Yeah.
Now, let's just say the 8th tenant lien, and now the 7th tenant lien. Now you have 2 tenants that you're putting money in. Can you afford to carry this asset forward?
But what about vacancy rates in the city?
We've already included our vacancy in there, but we're also going to look at one case. When we do our due diligence, we're also going to look at the guarantor, because
Got
you're
it.
guaranteeing that loan as well. We're guaranteeing that loan. We're taking that first charge, which is the asset, but we're also looking at you. Can you pay your loan? What's your worthiness? I'm just going to say somebody has a really bad credit score and they don't have they don't pay on time.
Ooh.
Well, yes, your tenants might pay, but how about again, if your tenant leaves or you do collect rent, but you don't pay us on time?
That's a problem.
Right. So
But I would always pay on time.
well,
I was trying to convince them. Just didn't work out for me. So I have a little bit of like anger towards Scotiabank right now because of that.
Never heard of them in my life.
Yeah, I mean, I never want to talk about them ever again. But it was really sad. I mean, I did figure out the financing for this asset. It was in Sudbury, so that was
Okay.
another problem. That it's not Toronto. But I figured it out, but I had to go through some really difficult days because, I had to ask for an extension. I had to increase my down payment, and it was just not fun. And it made me realize that there's so much misinformation out there. Like, I was told I don't need to show my income to get this asset. But then when all was said and done, they needed me to have an income. So,
You know what I always tell my clients is, be it residential or be it commercial, you need to, at least a week before, everything needs to be done. You need to be able to be say, okay, my mortgage is in place, my lawyer has the instructions,
Insurance is
I
done.
my
Yeah.
insurance is, and then my asset is closing on the 1st, or on the 25th. The next 6 days, I can focus on, moving
Utilities
or
and all that fun
whatever,
stuff.
right?
Yeah.
You should not be worrying about the mortgage till 2 days before closing.
Yeah.
Because you are stressed. It is one of your biggest purchases. I mean, buying a house is not cheap. Let's be very honest, it's
No.
not cheap. If you're buying $1 million property,
That's a
that's your
lot.
biggest asset that you're buying in your life.
Yeah.
You should be able to sleep 2 days before.
Yeah. You know what the funny part is in this market, like right now, because I'm helping a lot of residential buyers, I'm working with a lot of upsizers. So there's a lot of people that are selling their condos, and they're looking to move into either a freehold townhome, a semi-detached, or a detached home. So it's very necessary for them to have that mortgage conversation. One, because they're going to be getting an inflow of, money that they didn't have before when they
Right.
bought the asset. So a big chunk, actually the entire down payment is coming from the sale of their
Right.
primary residence, and they're upsizing now. So a lot of times mortgage agents are able to share, okay, if you have 200,000 down payment, we can buy something that's 999, like right at $1 million mark. But not a lot of people are educating on what their monthly costs would be.
Right.
Like, yes, when you have 200-ish K, you can buy an asset that's $1 million, but let's dive a little deeper on what the monthly cost would be on 800,000. That's where I find that people are really stretching themselves. Like, yes, you can buy something that's $1 million, but should you?
Right.
Because the incomes have to support the monthly payment. So what's your stance on that? Do you come across people that are pushing their limits?
You know what? It's funny. A lot of the times, like I have young professionals who will be, they'll be in a townhouse or in a condo, and now they're thinking of buying this house. And I had this conversation with a couple, and really sweet couple. And I remember we were sitting at the branch, and they were so, their minds were set on buying this $1.7 million house. It was gorgeous. When I saw the pictures, I was like, oh, this is great. And they were
Yeah,
selling
you
their
wanted to buy it.
I was like, oh, can I have it? They were selling their townhouse, and, I was like, the monthly payments were ridiculous. And for their income, it was literally what they were going to make was going to their mortgage.
So
I had this-
$1.7 million purchase, how much was the down payment they were going to put?
Oh, they had, like, they were getting a gift from their parents, and they were going to sell this place, and everything was going in. And so
Wow.
basically they were going to be left with no savings. And I asked them, and I said, this is great. Like, we'll get your pre-approval. We'll get all of this. And, you guys, like, it's huge. Like, house is massive, right? You have like one child. Is this your forever home? And they said, no. And I said,
Forever Home is $5 million.
no, I said, like, why is this, like, why are we looking at this right now? You just started, the husband had to actually quit his job, and he was starting his own business out.
Wow.
So, it was a lot of moving parts. And what she said to me was, oh, all of her friends have houses very similar to that. And that was a conversation I had with her. And I said, listen, I'm going to take off my mortgage specialist hat, and I'm going to talk to you as a friend, and I'm going to give it to you real. Why?
This is a keeping up with the Joneses problem.
Right. And I was like, why are you moving into a house that we might not be able to afford in a year? Your husband's starting a new business. You are going to be the breadwinner for a long period of time.
Yeah.
This is a lot of moving parts. And you know what? It was like 15 minutes of us talking it out. And they said, you know what, we'll call you tomorrow. And I never got that call. And I said, oh, maybe I brushed them the wrong way. And 2 days later, I get a call saying, we're actually not going ahead with that house. And I said, why? And they said, because
you were right.
because we don't want to just do it because of our friends being there. They actually ended up buying 2 condos as investment property.
So smart.
They ended up going to builders and buying 2 smaller condos. And they were like, you know what? We actually found out we were pregnant with our second child. So they're like, thank you, because this house that we're in is sufficient for us. We have 2 assets now that we put in. They're, great
Gifts
payment
for their
plans.
kids.
Great
Yeah.
payment plans. We don't have to stretch our budget, and we keep some savings with us. And I was like, yeah, you don't need that 1.7 house.
Yeah, that is so necessary. Like, I just find it a little bizarre. The prices of the homes But then also, who's buying these houses, right? You don't need a house that is 3,500 square feet for a couple.
No, and you don't need to do it because your friends are doing it, or your
That's
relatives
another
are doing it, or just because the fab is saying it.
Status thing.
Yeah, it's the same thing. When I look at renters, when I have clients who are first-time home buyers and saying, "Well, you're paying rent, but you're building someone else's equity."
I agree with that.
Right.
I agree with what you're saying, but I rent and I get a lot of that too. Like, oh my God, you're a realtor and you rent, shame on you. But it's like I rent so that I could buy cash flowing assets, right? For me, it's different. I'm single. I can live in a different part of the city every year. I love living in like fancy condos downtown that I can rent for about 3,500. But if I bought them for $1 million too, the cost of ownership would be about $8,000 a
Yeah,
month.
it'd be almost double.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it makes sense for me. I'd rather continue to buy other assets, but for families, yeah, of course, like the monthly cost is so important to factor in. It's wonderful that you're going to sell your, freehold townhome that you bought for $500,000, but you can sell it for $1 million, and then now you have a $500K down payment. It's great, but how about you use that $500,000 to buy 5 different assets rather than one big home and have a big
Absolutely.
$12,000 mortgage payment?
Right.
Why?
No, and as long as you're getting the rental to do the rental offset, it's great.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree with you.
So tell me a little bit about, how your business has suffered or boomed in the last 8 months with all of the interest rate increases.
I think it's everyone's favorite topic. Like if you go out for dinner and you don't talk about interest rates, something's wrong.
Even the people that are not in the real estate industry love talking about interest rates and speculating.
Oh, I love it. I think the best is when right before, you're going to announce if we're going in for a hike or everything, and how everyone's speculation comes
They're
in.
just
And
experts.
Yeah, I just sit there and I listen. I was like, oh, great.
Oh, yeah,
well,
tell
really?
me more.
Okay, tell me. So I love listening to it. But it's funny because I was like, if interest rates don't come up in the middle of the night, like in a conversation, something went wrong.
Night's not done.
Yeah, something's going to go. Absolutely, business has taken that hit. But I also find now I have very serious home buyers. I have very serious investment portfolios. I have very serious people coming in and buying those homes. Because, as much as I want to say who is an expert out there, you can't time that market. And interest rates are never going to be something that, we can control.
Free money,
Right.
1.1%.
Yeah, and it's a give and take, because if you see that the interest rates are high, you'll see the houses are not as inflated.
Kinda low,
right,
yeah.
Or you don't have those multiple offers, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't have 50 offers coming in, because now you kind of see that the prices are a little bit stable. Absolutely, my business has taken a hit. However, I also find that there are more serious conversations. I have more serious leads that are turning into actual business versus when the interest rates were a little bit lower. It would be anyone trying to put their name in that hat and saying, oh, I want to buy a house, or I want to buy this. And I was like,
With no plan in place.
yeah, like what does that asset mean to you? They didn't have that end plan. What is my 5-year plan? They didn't know what they were doing. I always hear it with clients saying, oh, I want to buy this asset and it's going to be, I'm going to flip it. Well,
Did you notice I rolled my eyes?
yeah, did you factor in capital gains? Did you factor in what that means to you?
Did you factor in the cost of the labor, the cost of the materials?
Is this
which
your
have
full-time
gone
job?
up exponentially? Who's your project manager?
I had someone say, oh, all I have to do is just paint it. And I was like, do you think the owner before you didn't think of just painting the house? Like, why do you think that your paint is going to work miracles? Is this your full-time job? Can you keep this asset for a couple of months without losing sleep?
Yeah.
And so, those are those questions. So now I think, going back to it, I have a lot of clients that come in that are serious. Mm-hmm. They're looking at investment properties. They're looking with builders to look at different projects, or they're first-time home buyers, but they're coming in seriously. Again, the interest rates are not, you can't time it, but you can look at what that house means to you right now. What does that asset mean to you right now?
Yeah, and also I feel like people are forgetting that in the last 5 years, interest rates have gone up really high, but so has property values, right? If you look at the 5-year picture.
Right.
So, yes, the interest rates are high right now, but you'll kind of be like kicking yourself next year if you could have bought today and you didn't, right? Because
Absolutely.
you don't know what's going to happen to the market. I know a lot of people in 2020, friends of mine, wanted to buy, but they were waiting for the market to crash. I'm just waiting for the recession to happen, as if it's a thing that God will tell you, hey, by the way, recession is happening, so go buy. Like, I find it bizarre.
Right.
And there's still some people that are like waiting for the crash to happen, right? So I reiterate this, that yes, the interest rates are 5 to 6%, but you could potentially be sitting on appreciation gold in the next 2 to 5 years.
Absolutely. And is that cash doing anything to you that's sitting in the account right now?
Exactly.
Like, let's be honest.
Unless
it
you're a
is.
private lender.
Yeah, I mean, it's
But
not.
no.
And, it's funny. Like, I'll go back to talking about BMO's builder program. Like,
Yeah.
we have an awesome builder program. So if you actually go and, go with your real estate agent like yourself, and your clients actually go and book a condo today.
Okay. Like a pre-construction?
Like a pre-construction
Okay.
condo. And we do their pre-approval. Their pre-approval is valid until they get that condo. They don't need to give me
Okay.
any more documents on closing. You're done. Like, today we pre-approve you, you are done until you get that condo. You
Love
don't
it.
need to give me any documents up on closing day.
Really?
You don't need to go through the whole process again. You are done now. Now, the best part about BMO is this. You talked about it. It's liquid gold.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just, hypothetically, let's just say that condo today, you bought it for $500,000. And I say, you know what, Salwa, you're pre-approved. Everything is great. Upon closing, you can close. I'm not going to ask you for anything. I'm not going to ask you for any more documents.
This is like, I'm so shocked right now.
So let's just say it's 20.
Let's go buy a pre-con right now.
So, I mean, let's just say we're sitting in 2023.
Yeah.
The condo's ready in 2025.
Yeah.
And you come and say to me, okay, my condo's closing. I'm not asking you for anything because you are pre-approved.
And you're giving me a commitment letter at that time?
Absolutely. And I've given you the interest rate and I've locked it in for you.
Nice.
So whatever
For 2 years?
for that whatever builder rate that the builder offered me, I'm actually using that builder rate for you.
Love it.
So we're done for 2 years. Now say you come to me and say, hey, this condo I bought for $500,000.
But it's worth $700,000
It's
now.
worth $700,000. I'm going to say, absolutely it is. I'm going to do an appraisal and it comes out at $700,000. I'm going to lend on $700,000 now.
Nice.
So you've actually built equity in your condo for $200,000.
I love that.
Yes, you do need to go through the pre-approval process
Of
now.
course.
But you're also now taking out $200,000 worth of equity of something that was just on paper for you.
Yeah. So now if I knew, and if a lot of my viewers knew about this program, they wouldn't try to do assignment flipping.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Because when you are doing assignment, you are paying HST, you're paying capital gains, and it's really not a good time to assign right now because the builder prices were so high. So I would rather close on the asset, rent it, live in it, do whatever with it, and wait for a good time to sell
And
or
take out,
keep it long term.
and
or
take
pull
out that equity. Take out that
I
equity and
love
buy
that
another
plan.
property.
I love that plan.
So-
That's pretty interesting. I will definitely ask you to send us more information that we can share to everybody watching about this program.
Yeah, our builder program is, great compared to the other FIs out there. Because we come in, we do the pre-approval and say like, I'll give you an example. I had a client who was, she's an elderly lady, she's very sweet. She'd pre-booked a house in Milton and it was like $900,000. When she pre-booked it, she was pre-approved. And so, like the neighbor beside her, who was also like the detached house, they did an appraisal and it came out at 1.3. It's $400,000 of equity. Wow. She's like, I don't want to get pre-approved. I don't need the additional money. But the family right beside her, they actually went and they weren't with BMO, and so they were not able to take it from their FI. But if she wanted, she could have taken $400,000 equity out of that property, and she could have used it for another property. She could have.
She could have used it for 5.
It's a great thing.
That's amazing.
So our builder
like
program
that
is really
plan.
nice.
Yeah. And this is specific to BMO.
This is specific to BMO.
And are there specific specific projects that qualify for this program?
You know what the best part about the builder program is? If hypothetically, most of the builders, I would say let's just say about 80 to 90% of the builders are already on it. If you come across a project that the builder is not on, we're very open to put the builder on our program.
Interesting.
Also, great thing, for the builder side is because they offer some cap rates and some special discounting, and that they offer their clients, and BMO will honor those rates.
Amazing.
So if they say, we negotiated, I'm just saying, in today's market, if the rates are 6%, but our clients are going to get 5.5%, we have to honor it. So we're giving you that 5.5%.
That is amazing.
So it's great, and also great with the builder program is the interest rates. So say you booked 2 years ago and the interest rate was 4.5%, we can honor it. We can actually put in a pricing request and honor it for that closing. But now say that the interest rates were actually lower, you can avail today's interest rates. So we're pretty flexible when it comes to that.
That is pretty cool. That's like the best thing I heard today. It's very exciting.
I thought I just made your day, me coming in.
Yeah, well, that too. But this is a huge cherry on top because a lot of times, I know when people were buying pre-cons, they would just get like these approval letters that didn't mean shit. And now we can actually have a pre-approval that means something,
Actually, you're right. So with a lot of the builders, they want firm pre-approval letters. They don't want you to say, I tentatively, I kind of qualify. They want a firm approval. To the point that some builders will actually call us and say, hey,
is this
so-and-so,
real?
is so-and-so your client? Did you do this? Is this
Love
your name?
that.
They validate everything.
Nice.
So you just can't go and get those letters
It
anymore.
used to be, yeah. I remember these mortgage brokers would just replicate the same thing with different client names. And I'm like, how are builders even like
No, they call and they
approving
verify.
this?
Yeah, they call and they verify.
It's very interesting. Something new we learned today. Now, I want to know, this question is about the stress test. A lot of the buyers that I'm working with right now are talking about the stress test, and I don't think there is enough education out there about what that means. And mainly, I want people to understand that this is for their benefit.
Right.
So why don't you explain that to me?
So a stress test for every bank, and I will say mostly all FIs kind of follow the same way. We take in the highest value of what we think that the interest rate is going to be. So we test you on that value. So let's just say today's prime is 7.2. We might actually do the stress test at like 8.9.
Wow.
The reason is that we're saying that the interest rate might go to 8.9. We're not saying it is. We're not speculating anything. We're not putting anything in the market. We're just saying that might go to 8.9. And we're going to put your interest rates, and we're going to put your mortgage payment at that 8.9.
Got it.
If you qualify at 8.9, for us, it would be anything less than that, you're golden. So we're just doing that highest stress test for you to say, hey, this is what you would be qualifying at. And if you qualify at that, anything lower on a variable, you're great. And it's the same thing for the fixed one as well.
And what is the meaning of trigger rate?
When your actual mortgage rate actually hits that stress test rate. So at that point, that rate is done. Anything now above that rate, what you qualified for, now you've triggered that rate, like that high ceiling rate that we've done. At this point, you are now not able to meet your payments because now it's a little bit of a higher rate. Now you'll need to call by your bank and say, how do I kind of fix that? Do I go on a fix? Especially if you're in a variable, you might have hit it, especially on your trigger rate, you might be hitting it on your fix. It's like, now I've reached that point and now I'm only paying interest. I'm not even paying principal at this point. So it's like the bank will revisit with you and say, how do we make that so you're not defaulting? Because technically you're defaulting when you hit that trigger rate.
Because a lot of people are in that position right now. And a lot of people are triggered to make that move and try to sell because they're like, we can't afford this right now. So what does a bank do in that situation to make it better?
So again, you'll either work with two options.
One second, I'm going to ask that question again. Can we tell them to shut up? I just told him to shut up, but he won't shut up. Matthew, the next guest. Yeah, but he needs to shut up. You guys, shh. Sorry. I'm going to ask that question again.
Let me just take note of the time.
Yeah.
Good.
So a lot of clients are in that position right now where they've hit the trigger rate and all the money is going towards the interest. What can banks do in that situation to help them?
So there's kind of two options. Either if you go and speak to kind of our, our customer service team, they'll give you different options. They'll, see if a fix is an option if you're on a variable. They might ask you to run a refinance the mortgage again with today's rate. There's a few options. Again, it's what the customer wants. They may ask you to increase your payments, so you're looking at a higher balloon payment, what they call it. So let's just say it was 5,000, but you actually need to do 5,500 to be able to cover that interest plus your, a little bit of the principal as well. So there's different options. Speak to someone at the branch. They'll, either if they don't have the answers, they'll put you in touch with a mortgage specialist and say, what can we do for that?
That's very interesting because I know a lot of people that are trying to sell right now to not be in that situation, but I don't recommend that as the best thing because a lot of the homes are not even appraising at the values that they bought it at.
Right.
So that's another whole, thing to deal with. They're losing money on the sale of the home.
Right. You know what? It's funny. Financials are like when it comes to financing and financials, it's such an icky topic. Nobody wants to talk about it.
Nobody does.
Nobody wants to come into my office and have this uncomfortable conversation.
Yeah.
Because I think it's so weird. Like I remember it was around COVID and I was home and my husband was there and I was talking to a client and I said, well, how much can you afford? Or what are your savings? And he was like, those are really uncomfortable questions. And I said, they're really not.
Yeah.
Because when we talk about financing, you need to be open, you need to be comfortable with these uncomfortable questions. Because you need to know, can I make that payment?
Yeah.
Can I stretch myself? Can I, I had someone say to me, he was a 23-year-old, and he said, oh, I'll just live on like instant noodles for the rest of the year for my house. And I said, no, you're not.
No, you're not.
You will want that occasional drink.
So
you
bizarre.
will, right? So, having those uncomfortable questions. So when someone comes into my office and I say, well, what's your savings like? How much can you stretch yourself? They're not the most comfortable questions.
It is very uncomfortable because it makes you question your own spending habits. And that's what it is. Like I remember initially when I started buying investment properties and my mortgage broker would ask me to send bank statements or to make a list of all the monthly expenses, I would actually have to look at myself and look at how much money I'm spending. And it was the most uncomfortable thing for me to do.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I spent like $500 on food, on Uber Eats this month, for example. It's very uncomfortable, but we do it. So I would rather be real about it than run away from it because I love Uber Eats. I love my Starbucks coffee, but there's a place for that, and then you just have to push yourself to
you just have to
earn
know.
a higher income. If you know that these are your spending habits, then let's work harder at earning a higher income. If you like buying investment properties, let's have all of our finances organized because it's very tedious to actually, listen to what your mortgage provider wants you to do. And then you actually got to do the numbers, which is, it's not fun for me too.
No, I'll give you an example. It was last week. I had a client. There were 4 of them. They came into my office, 2 couples, they're friends, and they wanted to buy an investment property. And I said, absolutely. And I said, okay, so how much savings do we have? And it was kind of like radio silence. And so one step before, they're like, oh, we're so comfortable with each other. We're like great friends. And, this is going to be a 50-50 and, great. And I was like, oh, wonderful. And I said, well, how much savings do you have?
They don't want to share.
They don't want to talk in front of the other
How
person.
comfortable are you really with each other?
And the second question, I said, okay, well, what are your incomes? And again, it was like, oh, north of 100. And I said,
but don't you think the income question, it's very cultural that nobody wants to talk about their income. Money is so taboo in our culture.
So I was like, how are you guys so, because the conversation was, we're so open with each other. We're going to go 50-50. There's nothing.
We trust each other.
We all earn roughly the same. Our lifestyles are roughly the same. Pen to paper, I sat with both couples separately.
Oh.
One was very different than the other.
Interesting. Was one richer than the other? Is that why there was a discomfort in sharing? Was that a comparison thing going on?
They kind of said that they were the same. Well, one household was making $300,000, the other household was making $125,000.
Wow. Yeah, see? People don't want to share incomes for some reason. It's so taboo. Apparently it is not classy to share how much money you make.
No, fair enough, but have that discussion.
But
Have it
not when you're
behind
trying to
closed
have an
doors.
investment
Right.
property,
Or
doing
when
a
you're buying it
joint
with
venture with
friends.
somebody. Yeah, then you need to really know.
I actually told them, I said, you guys are married respectively, but you guys are going into a partnership. It is
This
like
is a
marriage.
marriage.
It is going to be uncomfortable. And have those numbers.
Yeah.
Because if one couple can't afford it, can the other couple carry a little bit more?
Yeah.
And they said, no, everything is 50-50. And I said, well, have you looked at the level of savings for both of you? They're significantly different. Your lifestyles are significantly different.
Yeah. Even the cost of their lifestyle, their homes, etc., is
Right.
probably very different.
Yeah.
It's very interesting because a lot of times I would get calls from buyers that want to buy an investment property together, but both parties that want a joint venture have completely different ideas of what they want to buy. And it's great to be able to joint venture with somebody, right? Because not everybody has enough capital just by themselves. So to
Right.
partner with somebody would be amazing. But I think that's where a mortgage partner and a realtor would come in handy to really lay down the foundation of what this process is going to look like.
Right.
And maybe the people that think they're close need to have a sit down and be made. You think you guys are close? Well, let me make you close right now. Let's talk about these numbers right now.
Absolutely. And I think, having that discussion, like, as I said, like we talked about the pre-approvals, we talked about all that, having that discussion up front, I know it's uncomfortable. Believe me, when I purchased my
Yeah.
first house, we went through it.
Yeah.
It was uncomfortable. Someone sitting across on the other side, and I was not
And
in
judging you.
and but we're not. Like I'm telling you, we're not. But I remember the first time when we went to go buy our first home, I was in consulting.
Yeah.
And I had a banker sitting across, and she asked me uncomfortable questions. And all she asked me was really how much you make. But it
That
was
made you uncomfortable.
It was uncomfortable, and I was like, why is she asking me this? And they was like, oh, well, how much, what's your monthly expenses? And I was like, whoa, we just met. Like, buy me dinner first. And then, but it was those conversations. And now when I ask it, it's not to make you uncomfortable, but
Yeah.
it's to say, really, where can you stretch till? Where can you go till? And coming back to your point, realtors and mortgage specialists need to work partnerships. We need
They
to work
do.
in hand.
Yeah.
So I think that's
Yeah. Now, there is this one question that a lot of people ask me on Instagram. What is the difference between pre-approval and pre-qualification? I'm sure you've heard this
yeah.
multiple times, and I've made a few videos about it too, but a lot of people still want to know. So, let's tell them.
I'll talk for like the Bank of Montreal's perspective. Like, so BMO only does pre-approvals.
Okay.
So we don't have pre-qualifications anymore. We don't do those anymore. So pre-approvals are firm approvals.
Where you actually look at all the numbers, do the math, the ratios of debt, and tell them this is how much you're approved to purchase for.
We actually take it one step further. We take it to credit. We get it approved
nice.
from credit.
Love
and
it.
we say, you are now qualified from the Bank of Montreal for this amount.
Got it. So say there's a credit card they forgot about. You pull up a credit report and you will tell them these are the things
Absolutely.
you owe. And based on this is your debt
Yes.
ratio.
So we will do the calculations. We will send it to credit. We will get credit to approve, that
And you will
loan amount.
collect the pay stub, NOAs, all of that
Everything
fun
is
stuff.
done. We
Okay.
pre-approve you, and now that value that we have said, we are pre-approving you for that value.
So they can go shopping, no problem.
Now you can go comfortably shopping.
Amazing.
So the Bank of Montreal doesn't do, and a lot of banks actually now don't do the pre-qualification. The pre-qualification was everything else right before it, but
Yeah.
without sending it to credit. So now
Very
credit has said,
interesting.
hey, we've adjudicated the file, and now we're going to go for this.
Yeah, I like that plan because a lot of times, once the credit report is pulled, then there's some secrets that come out, and that messes up the numbers completely.
You know what? It's a credit card that you didn't know about, or some payment that you signed, like you were a co-signer for something, and you totally forgot. Like, oh, I helped my sister buy her first house.
Yeah.
Oh, I helped my child buy their first house, and I co-signed it. Well, it's coming on your credit bureau now.
Yeah.
And you might have forgotten about it, or a car loan that you said, hey, I don't even have this car. I've paid it off. Well, it's still coming on your credit bureau. You might have to call Equifax and say,
Yeah.
hey, this is closed out 2 years ago. And just updating that information.
Very interesting. Okay. Fuck. I forgot what I was gonna. Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up now.
Okay.
But I don't know how to wrap it up. So let me ask something like a final question. Do you have any ideas?
I like the final tips, final words,
Okay.
right?
So thank you so much, Natasha, for all of this insight. Now, wrapping up, are there any final thoughts on what buyers should do when they're just starting to think about making a move to buy their first property or upsize?
Absolutely. I think, having a team of trusted advisors like yourself, having a realtor that you can call on, that relationship is important because you are going to be stuck with them for hours in driving and, going to houses and having someone that you trust and you like. Again, having that mortgage, conversation, having that pre-approval done, looking at your financials, looking at what your, ability is, what is that kind of thing. And then secondly, wrapping it all up, but having trusted people with you. I think that's the key thing.
Yeah.
From your lawyers to your accountants, who's going to close your transaction?
Yeah.
What does 30 days moving days look like, or what does 60 days look like for you?
Yeah.
Having those trusted advisors and having them all talk to each other. I think that's key.
Very
having all your key
important.
players in the same room. And I'm sure none of us as professionals have a problem jumping on a call and
Not at
getting
all.
in front of
Yeah.
having who's that lawyer who's going to close, who's that accountant, who's that, having everybody there, it's going to make your life so much easier.
I love that. Thank you so much for coming and sharing so much valuable information. Where can my viewers find you?
Oh, well, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to be here. They can either contact me directly through my phone number or email me.
Perfect. I'll add the email address in the description if you want to reach out to Natasha.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Amazing. Yay.